The wiper blades sliced violently across the windshield, fighting a losing battle against the torrential Lagos downpour. Inside the custom matte black G-Wagon, the world was silent, insulated by German engineering and the soft hum of the air conditioner set to a chilling 16 degrees. Jack checked his diamond-encrusted Rolex for the third time in a minute. It was 2:45 p.m. The meeting with the investor was at 3 p.m. sharp at the Eko Hotel and Suites. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a lifeline. His real estate empire, Apex Homes, was a house of cards teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. If he didn't secure the funding from the legendary, reclusive billionaire known only as Alhaji Danjuma, the banks would seize everything by Monday morning. He gripped the leather steering wheel, his knuckles white. "Move, you idiots," he hissed at the gridlock of yellow Danfo buses and soaked pedestrians cluttering the road ahead. The Victoria Island streets were rapidly turning into rivers, brown and churning with debris. To Jack, the people wading through the knee-deep water were merely obstacles, barely human. He felt a surge of contempt for them. He had clawed his way up from poverty, shedding his past like a snake sheds skin. That past included his ex-wife, Rebecca. A sour taste filled his mouth just thinking about her. He had kicked her out 3 years ago, tired of her simple ways, her lack of sophistication, and her inability to blend into his new circle of elites. She was an anchor, dragging him down, so he had cut the rope. He assumed she was back in her village, likely selling peppers in a market, while he was about to dine with kings. The traffic crawled forward an inch. Jack drummed his fingers on the dashboard, his anxiety manifesting as aggression. He saw an opening in the service lane, a narrow strip of flooded asphalt that was technically meant for pedestrians and broken-down cars. Without a second thought, he swerved the massive SUV to the right, the engine roaring like a beast unleashed. He didn't care about the laws. In Lagos, money was the law, and he believed he still had enough of it to buy his way out of trouble. As he picked up speed, bypassing the line of frustrated drivers, his headlights illuminated a figure standing precariously on the curb ahead. It was a woman dressed in a modest, soaked Ankara gown, clutching a bag against her chest, waiting for a break in the chaos. Jack narrowed his eyes, his foot hovering over the accelerator. She looked pathetic, soaked and shivering. Just another loser in a city of winners. He prepared to speed past, indifferent to her plight, focused only on the golden ticket waiting for him at the hotel. As the matte black SUV barreled down the narrow service lane, the woman on the curb turned her head, shielding her eyes against the blinding glare of the LED headlights. For a split second, time seemed to suspend in the humid cabin. Jack squinted, his heart skipping a beat not out of fear, but out of sheer disbelief. The face was unmistakable. Even without the expensive makeup or the designer wigs he used to force her to wear, he knew those high cheekbones and that quiet, timid posture. It was Rebecca. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow, followed instantly by a wave of nauseating smugness. There she was, just as he had predicted 3 years ago, stranded, soaked, and pathetic. She wasn't just a pedestrian anymore. She was living proof that he had won the divorce. While he was negotiating billionaire deals, she was clearly waiting for a cheap ride, battling the elements like a common street rat. A cruel, twisted smile curled the corners of Jack's lips. The serendipity of the moment was too delicious to ignore. Directly in front of his reinforced bumper lay a crater of a pothole, filled to the brim with a stagnant, oily mixture of rainwater and sewage from the overflowing gutters. Any decent human being would have slammed on the brakes or swerved to the left to spare the bystander. But Jack was not feeling decent, he was feeling powerful. "Let's see how you like the taste of the high life, Rebecca," he muttered to the empty car. Instead of easing off the gas pedal, he stomped on it. The twin-turbo engine growled aggressively, propelling the heavy vehicle forward with renewed velocity. He aimed the tires with the precision of a sniper, targeting the deepest part of the sludge. The impact was catastrophic and immediate. The massive off-road tires slammed into the crater, displacing gallons of thick, brown filth in a violent arc. It wasn't just a splash, it was a tidal wave of grime. Through the soundproof glass, Jack couldn't hear the sound of the water hitting her, but he saw it. The wave crashed over Rebecca, engulfing her completely. The brown liquid plastered her simple gown to her skin and drenched her hair, dripping down her face in murky rivulets. She staggered back, shocked and blinded by the assault. Jack felt a rush of adrenaline, a sick sense of satisfaction vibrating through his fingertips. He had just physically marked her with his disdain, washing away any lingering doubt that he was the superior being in their broken history. He checked his rearview mirror, watching her small figure shrinking in the distance, a muddy statue in the rain, before he slowed down, preparing to roll down the window for the final twist of the knife. The friction of tires against wet asphalt screeched as Jack slammed on the brakes, bringing the behemoth vehicle to a sudden halt just a few meters ahead of his victim. He wasn't done yet. The adrenaline of the splash wasn't enough to satiate his bitter soul. He needed to hear her beg, or at least see her cry. With a press of a button, the tinted glass on the passenger's side slid down with a mechanical whir, letting the roar of the storm and the smell of wet earth invade his sanitized sanctuary. He leaned across the leather seat, shouting over the drumming rain, his voice dripping with venom. "Oh well, if it isn't the village queen herself," Jack hollered, a wicked grin stretching across his face. "I see the streets have welcomed you back home, Rebecca. Look at you. You look like a soaked rat." He reached into the center console, pulled out a crisp, mint-fresh 1,000 naira note, and crumbled it into a ball. He tossed it out the window, watching it land in the sludge at her feet. "Here, buy some soap. Maybe it will wash off the stench of poverty, though I doubt it." Rebecca did not scramble for the money. She didn't scream curses or wail in despair, which was the reaction Jack had been salivating for. Instead, she slowly wiped the thick, brown muck from her cheeks with the back of her hand, her movements deliberate and graceful. She stood tall, her spine unbending despite the humiliation. Her eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto his. It was a look of profound pity, the kind one gives to a madman ranting at a wall. Slowly, she lowered her gaze and placed a protective hand over her midsection. The wet fabric of her boubou clung tightly to her body, revealing a prominent, rounded swell that Jack had missed in his initial rush. She was heavily pregnant. Jack scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "And knocked up too? Typical. I assume the father is some vulcanizer or bricklayer who can't even afford an umbrella." He was about to launch another barrage of insults when the atmosphere on the street shifted abruptly. The chaotic noise of the traffic jams behind him died down, replaced by the piercing, rhythmic wail of high-grade sirens cutting through the storm. The world outside Jack's window exploded into a disorienting kaleidoscope of red and blue strobe lights, shattering the gray gloom of the afternoon. Before he could process the shift in atmosphere, two massive Land Cruisers, plated with ballistic steel and dark as midnight, swerved aggressively into the service lane. One slammed on its brakes inches from his front bumper, while the other pulled up tight against his rear, boxing him in with military precision. The roaring engine of his G-Wagon fell silent, drowned out by the heavy thud of combat boots hitting the pavement. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He assumed he had cut off a politician or perhaps a military general, a fatal mistake in a city where power was often demonstrated through force. Doors flew open, and 4 mobile police officers, clad in tactical black gear and wielding AK-47s, surrounded his vehicle. "Kill the engine! Hands on the dashboard!" "Now!" one of the officers screamed, leveling the barrel of his rifle at Jack's head through the windshield. Jack, shaking violently, scrambled to obey, raising his trembling hands in surrender. He was no longer the king of the road. He was a terrified spectator in his own demise. But the officers weren't looking at him. Their attention was focused on securing a perimeter for the vehicle gliding silently between the SUVs. It was a phantom in every sense of the word. A Rolls-Royce Phantom 8, long and majestic, floating over the flooded road like a yacht on calm waters. The rear suicide door of the luxury saloon swung open, and a uniformed aide instantly snapped open a massive umbrella to shield the occupant. A man stepped out, his pristine white agbada flowing around him, untouched by the storm. Jack gasped, his breath fogging up the glass. It was Alhaji Danjuma, the very man he was racing to meet. The titan of industry whose signature could save his crumbling company was standing right there in the rain. But Danjuma didn't even glance at the G-Wagon. Instead, panic etched his features as he rushed toward the mud-covered woman on the curb. "Rebecca!" The billionaire's voice cracked with genuine terror, audible even over the rain. He ignored the aide with the umbrella, stepping straight into the puddle to wrap his arms around her shivering frame. "My God, look at you! I told the driver to circle back. Why did you step out of the lobby?" He began frantically wiping the sludge from her arms with his expensive sleeves, treating her with a reverence usually reserved for fragile porcelain. Jack watched, his mind struggling to compute the impossible equation unfolding before him. The woman he had just drenched in sewage wasn't a beggar, she was the cherished priority of the wealthiest man in West Africa. Alhaji Danjuma's gaze shifted from his wife's soiled gown to the matte black beast idling before him. The transition in his demeanor was terrifying. The tenderness he had shown Rebecca evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, predatory stillness that made the temperature on the street seem to drop 10 degrees. He didn't scream or gesture wildly. Instead, he walked slowly toward the driver's side of the G-Wagon, his polished shoes splashing heedlessly through the same puddle Jack had weaponized moments ago. Inside the cabin, Jack felt his throat constrict. He wanted to raise the window, to seal himself away from the judgment approaching him, but his muscles refused to obey. He was paralyzed by the dawning horror that this silent investor he had pinned all his hopes on was now staring at him with the intensity of an executioner. The billionaire stopped inches from the door. He didn't look at the car, he looked directly into Jack's soul. "You must be Jack," Danjuma said, his voice terrifyingly calm, barely rising above a whisper. "My secretary showed me your portfolio. We were scheduled to discuss the future of Apex Homes in 15 minutes. Jack opened his mouth to stammer an apology, to fabricate a lie about brake failure or a sudden skid, but no sound came out. The excuse died on his tongue as Rebecca stepped up beside her husband. She didn't say a word to Jack. She simply rested her head on Danjuma's shoulder and whispered, "Let's go home, darling. The baby is kicking." Danjuma nodded, his eyes never leaving Jack's sweating face. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a sleek, black phone, dialing a number without looking at the screen. "Cancel the meeting," he spoke into the device, his tone flat and final. "And call the Minister of Works. Tell him that if this man, Jack, or his company receives a single permit to dig a hole in this city, I will pull my funding for the new bridge project. Ensure he is finished." He ended the call and tossed a final, withering glance at the developer. "You thought you were splashing water on a nobody. You just drowned your own future." Without another word, the couple turned away. The security team lowered their weapons, piling back into the escort vehicles with disciplined efficiency. The Rolls-Royce glided away, followed by the armored SUVs, disappearing into the gray curtain of rain like ghosts. Jack was left alone in the sudden, deafening silence of the service lane. The engine of his G-Wagon purred softly, the air conditioner blew cold air against his damp skin, and the leather seat cradled him in luxury. But as he sat there, dry and untouched by the storm outside, the weight of his absolute ruin crashed down on him. He had everything money could buy, but he had just lost the only thing that mattered. Please, kindly hit the subscribe button, like this video and share. This means a lot to us. Thank you for watching.